So here we are. I want to talk briefly about dimensions of power, and as we move through this course, it's becoming obvious to you that the book, I expect you to do the readings, and a lot of the quizzes will be based on the readings. This is kind of an add-on, so I don't know that this was treated to the extent that I wanted it treated in the course through the book. So here you go with dimensions of power. This is lecture at 2.5. So what do we know? Well, the typology of power. What are the types of power that are out there? There's legitimate power, right? And defined, right? Legitimate power is the perception that the power holder somehow is legitimized, justified in the power that they possess. And this could be by rank, this could be by designation, and they have this right to demand conformity or obedience. If you go to the airport and you're dealing with the TSA agents have a certain level of legitimate power to search you, to search your equipment. So this is conferred upon them, right? There's reward power. And the next two you're going to see are kind of similar with very slight difference, but they're often expressed in different texts, so let's include both of them. Reward power is the ability to manipulate rewards and or punishments within a given domain. And so in that case, I'm allowed to do this, and this is something the parents are essentially entitled to do. They can provide rewards for your good behavior. They can provide punishments for bad behavior, and that's part of parenting, and that's accepted culturally that parents can do that, right? Coercive power focuses more on the negative. It's the ability to compel through threats and punishment. So this, it might be a bully, but it could also be someone in the government. It could be a family member. It could be a boss. But notice that this focuses more on the negative aspect when we talk about coercive. That is forcing you to do it. Now, expert power is power that derives from perceived expertise, knowledge, experience, and skills. So in this time of pandemic, right, when we're urged to wear masks, this comes from a point of a couple different ways that this could be handled. With expert power, what I do is I explain to you, and I show you the videos, I show you the science, projecting, right, this virus-laden vapor, and how a mask limits the ability to project it at any distance. And then if you have a person projecting the virus, and you have another person who is the potential recipient who has a mask, notice how much then is blocked off. And a scientific explanation then, getting you to comply with wearing a mask using expert power, is going to hinge on selling you the scientific principles behind this. Now, referent power, way back in the day, when Nike took off, they're like, I want to be like Mike. I want to be like Michael Jordan, Air Jordans, right? And whether the shoes are good or not isn't really the issue necessarily at this point. The way the shoes are sold is that Michael Jordan is someone that we aspire to, that we like, so people say, I want to be like Mike. And to be like Mike, one of the things I can do, according to Nike, is purchase these Jordan-style shoes, right? So referent power then depends on us being liked, right, and people wanting to be like us. So either I succumb to referent power because the person will like me, or I want to be like them. But like is kind of the core word. So us Valley people, from the San Fernando Valley, can say like 17 times in a sentence, right? So think like there. Now, let's flip it around. We're not going to look at the source of the power and how the power is derived, but what are the three possible responses to social influence and three types of power? And as you, the future leaders, current and future leaders in our world, you Buckeyes, think about how you wield power, how you use power, and how that kind of plays out. Say hey to Annika. Hello, Annika. How's Annika? So, compliance, punishment and reward, coercive power. So if I tend to use coercive power, reward power, then what I'm doing is I'm getting people to comply. They do what I've asked them to do because they seek the reward that I offer, or they fear the punishment that I offer. The problem with coercive power, and using this, let's say, as a parent, is you have to be there to watch someone basically all the time. And that is, you watch, they step out of line, you clamp down. They do something well, then you reward them. But notice the person, as soon as you go away, or as soon as you're not able to do this any longer, the person will revert to whatever they want to do. So I kind of consider using coercive power, that is to gain compliance, is kind of the lowest level kind of situation. Now, identification, and notice this goes back to referent power, is a power of identification. This is a desire to be like the influencer. So my grandfather, I love my grandfather dearly, and when I was a kid, you know, my grandfather was a jack of all trades, as he said, master of none. He could do plumbing, he could do electrical, he could do carpentry, he could pour cement. There was nothing he couldn't do. He was totally old school about this, and I loved working with my grandfather. And he could ask me to do things, you know, and I would just do them because I wanted to be like him. And everything that he requested was, hey, I'm there, man. But the downside, and this of course didn't happen with my grandfather, but the downside of using referent power, as soon as you're not liked, then your power goes away and people no longer comply. So internalization, this is where parents want you to internalize the rules, the morals, the values that they present to you, that they want to guide your behavior. So in this case, when it becomes internalized, I'm not doing this out of threat of punishment. I'm not doing this for the reward. I'm doing this because I believe it's the right thing to do. So internalization, when we craft, let's say, persuasive messages, ultimately, or if we're in a workplace and we're trying to guide our employees, we want them to internalize the values, the principles, and the purpose in what's being done so that they do it without having to be watched, they do it without having to be reminded, and they do it without having to be rewarded or threatened. They do it because they've come to believe internally inside themselves, use that cliche in their heart of hearts, that this is the right thing to do. Elliot Aronson brought us this out of 1995. Trivia question, one of Elliot Aronson's most famous books. A grand old social psychology text called The Social Animal. It's been around, I don't know, it's probably in, edition 12 or 15. Let's ask the question, does power corrupt, right? Well, the simple answer, it appears so. And the moderator in this relationship appears to be the other orientation. So when we talk about the power corrupting people, those who, let's say, are authoritarian, those who are sadistic, like to apply power, and they get off on the application of power, making people do as they want them to do, and that type of leader. So this is a leader that's highly self-involved and is doing this for their own kick, right? To the extent that one is other-oriented, though, one is more likely to use their power in the service of others. So it's a far different game then, and the power is less likely to corrupt in this situation. To the extent that one is self-oriented, a greater propensity to use power to one's own benefit. Synthesis time again. You guys got to know that I'm a big fan of synthesis by now. The moderator in this relationship appears to be other orientation. Is power a possession? Well, is it part of self-concept? What is the narrative of the self's relationship to the self's power? Right? How do we measure the results of the use of power? That is, when I'm making my power play, when I'm trying to exert power, how do I determine whether it was well spent or not? In the short term, so sometimes we gain using power, we pull a power play on someone and we get what we want in the short term. But again, in this course, I'm going to continue to ask you, what's the long-term game? If we're playing long ball, how does it go? What's in the long term? What are potential consequences, of which there could be many? And notice the consequences can shift. Yeah, I feel really good because I got this over on them in the short term. But in the long term, perhaps I lost a friend, or I damaged my reputation, or I'm going to have to face consequences, negative consequences for my power play. So when using a power play, it's important to consider what will happen in the immediate, but then what are the potential long-term consequences, and am I willing to go with that? Note then, again, that the moderator in this relationship appears to be other orientation. So when we're using our power on behalf of another, that is, we're a parent trying to exert power to teach our children a lesson that they can internalize, if we want to tie this all together, right, internalize in the future so that they behave like we'd like them to behave, a good citizen, even when people aren't there. Because we know what character is. Character is what you do when nobody's watching. So, to the extent one is other-oriented, one is more likely to use their power in the service of others, and that is, power then becomes almost a gift rather than an element of torture to other people. To the extent one is self-oriented, the greater propensity to use power to one's own benefit, that is to use it selfishly, to make people suffer, to cause them pain, to develop personal gain. Right? So you will develop power, you already have power. It's up to you. It's kind of your mission to decide how you want to use the power. I'm asking you to be mindful, once again, about your power and how you use it. What are the consequences, and what is your purpose in employing that power in the first place? So I want to thank you, and here we go. That's Jilly, by the way, so she's one powerful entity in this house. There's no two ways about it. She possesses a great deal of power. Right, Annika? Yeah, okay. Take care.